Bring in Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead studio analyst. The level of surprise when you heard that Jon Rahm was defecting to the LIV Tour.
Not high at all. I mean, the rumors have been rampant for a couple of weeks. So if you go by the rumors, not at all. But if you go by his comments, over the last year and a half or so, where he was adamant that he wouldn't leave for LIV, that he had pledged his fealty to the PGA Tour and said that it wouldn't even be a smart thing for him to do at this point in his career, I'd say there are a lot of people that were surprised that weren't keeping up with the rumors as of late.
Why is the LIV Tour still acquiring golfers and somebody for $500 million?
I guess after the proposed merger and the wording in it that didn't allow them to recruit players or poach from either side by both parties, the Department of Justice, their antitrust division, they were concerned about the wording in it. And so both parties got rid of that wording, which opened the door. But really, I think the reason LIV did this was it was more a reminder to the PGA Tour, who was recruiting private equity over the last couple of months, and that was well known. I think more than anything, it was just a reminder to the PGA Tour of who really still had the hammer. LIV's in the more dominant position here. They've got $32 trillion worth of oil underneath that sand, and they're not going anywhere. I've said before, after the initial merger, and I tried to get my arms around it, Dan, once I got to a point where I thought I understood it well enough, I thought, and I said this, that the second worst thing that could happen to the PGA Tour was if this merger went through. And the worst thing that could happen to the PGA Tour was if this merger didn't go through.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if Jon Rahm got to the point where it's like, all right, there might be a merger. They're going to pay me $500 million or whatever. The PGA Tour kind of went behind our back to try to do this merger. I was a good soldier with Rory and fought for the PGA Tour, and now I can't turn down this money. And everybody else has kind of taken the slings and arrows before him that he can sort of go there. But, I mean, does that sound logical in your mind?
Absolutely. I think not the whole, but a lot of the professional golf world has kind of got something like the Stockholm syndrome with LIV now. And I think it can go right back. You pointed to the absolute right spot. After that June 6th proposed merger, I feel like a lot of people that were defending the PGA Tour, thinking they were on the right side of it, changed their position. They felt like they had been betrayed. They lost trust in the PGA Tour. Zach Johnson, the captain of the Ryder Cup team, even picked Brooks Koepka, who had not qualified for the Ryder Cup, to be on the Ryder Cup team. So I think sort of the trickle-down theory of the PGA Tour seemed to be doing business with people that they had previously harshly criticized, opened the door to everybody to make a move, something like this.
What is golf going to look like? What's the PGA Tour going to look like in 2 years? 3 years?
Well, I hope the LIV deal goes through now. It's obvious the best thing for the PGA Tour. And if it goes through, it remains to be seen whether LIV lives or not. If it doesn't, it looks like Rahm was the strategic play that LIV needed to make to bring this merger together, because each side has something the other side wants. Obviously, the PGA Tour would like an infusion of money, but LIV looks at the PGA Tour and what they see is a seat at the table, legitimacy, legacy. Every one of the 50 million golfers in the world knows about the history of the PGA Tour. They have the respect and recognition of commercial entities, broad commercial entities, whereas there's a lot of pushback for Saudi Arabia involvement in some of those avenues. So Saudi Arabia gets an immediate seat at the table and the respect and recognition of partnering with the single best golf entity in the world. So they both have something that they want. So if it comes together, I think golf is better off. If it doesn't, then you're going to have this never-ending competition between LIV and the PGA Tour, which sadly, it's hard to imagine how Liv loses here. The governor of Liv is Yasser Al Rumayyan, who is well educated, very clever, very charming, and can be quite intimidating. And he loves golf.
Talking to Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead studio analyst. If you had a camera on Rory McIlroy yesterday when he heard the news, what do you think it would have looked like or sounded like?
He probably shook his head, but I listened to Rory's remarks yesterday, and I thought they were spot on. He said he's going to miss competing against Jon Rahm. He said that he's immensely talented. All those things, no doubt are true. I'm going to miss watching Jon Rahm play. But I heard people and I read people who said that this was devastating to the PGA Tour. I think that's hyperbole. It would be devastating if Tiger went to Live. It would be devastating if Rory went to Live. It'd be devastating if Jordan Spieth went to Live. I just listened to the poll question answered by your audience. 88% not really interested in Rahm going to Live. The fact is, there are very few golfers in the world that move the needle and compel people to buy a ticket just to go see them.
Yeah.
Very few. You ask the executives that run golf around the world, and it is Tiger, Rory, and Jordan Spieth. Before Phil left, it was Phil. But there's Brooks Koepka, there's DJ, there's Phil, there's Cameron Smith. All of those stars didn't compel or galvanize audiences to watch Live last year. So I agree with your audience, 88% of your audience. I don't think Rob's going to have a huge impact on galvanized people to watch a product that is inferior.
Yeah, why don't they play 4 rounds? I mean, that's stupid.
Dan, why don't they play 4 rounds? Why don't they have a qualifying school, a feeder tour? Why don't they have a cut?
Yeah.
All of those things would give more legitimacy
Absolutely.
to the events
Absolutely.
than them buying these stars. Absolutely. They would have the best players. For the PGA Tour to compete with Liv, they would have to bring in private equity. This is the pickle they're in, because they'd have to bring in private equity to lock up players, sign them to contracts. But private equity, unlike the Saudis, would want to make a profit. So they wouldn't sign these players for these huge contracts. The Saudis are playing the long game, and they're trying to diversify their economy. And they're looking several decades down the road where they absolutely are desperate to diversify their economy. So they'll lose in the early goings of this to gain in the long term. Private equity is never going to make a deal like that. So Liv upper hand here in the negotiations.
Before I let you go, this rollback with the golf ball, I was watching the DP World Golf Tour, and there was an amateur who hit a drive 410 yards. And there was downhill, but everybody else was hitting like 340, 350. He still hit it 60 yards past everybody. 5% doesn't mean anything to these players. 5% means something to me. If you want to really make an impact, roll that ball back 20%. And then maybe they get back to playing these golf courses the way they're meant to be played. Your thoughts?
Well, the number of professional golfers in the world is 10,000, roughly speaking. There's 50 million golfers. That equates to 0.0003% of the golfers that play the game at the highest level. And a very small percentage of them hit it 300 plus yards. Certainly they don't carry it. The average carry on the PGA Tour this year was 284 yards. So the USGA and the R&A are making a decision that will hurt 98, 99% of the golfers, in that they will have to absorb the cost of the R&D of this new golf ball. Professional golfers don't pay for golf balls. and they will, to your point, Dan, they will so quickly recoup this lost distance of this golf ball. They'll do it like that. They will literally do it like that. You look at the distance gauge, huge distance gauge that Padraig Harrington made at 49 years old. Phil Mickelson made at 49 years old. Stuart Sink made at 49 years old. Cameron Tregali made, and scores of others. You look at those huge distance gains, and they will be compelled to do that. Meanwhile, you, me, we will all lose 5-10 yards or so on every tee shot and almost every single approach shot.
Yeah, I didn't have that 5 or 10 to lose, Brandel.
I didn't either. I didn't either. I can hear my balls land almost now.
Great to talk to you again, and thanks for joining us, bud.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Take care.
Brandel Chamblee, Golf Channel lead studio analyst.